Alright, back to the Triumph here from eBay. Got a, let me show you the VIN. Ignition control box replacement. It's a used unit, but let's just pop out one spark plug boot. I installed a spare spark plug in here. We'll see if it sparks. We don't need a scope just yet. We're in neutral. Let's crank it over. Alright, let's give it a whirl. I'll push in the clutch. Nice consistent spark. It actually started up without a charger, so definitely the right call for the igniter unit. That's promising. We're just waiting on a couple petcock parts. Get this fuel system under control, and this thing should be back on the road. So that was an expensive call, so we needed to do the diagnostics there, and we're absolutely spot on. You needed the scope. 4-channel pico scope was the only way to determine a bad crankshaft sensor, which zip ties are holding up, but I got a new one coming. And then the igniter box, $400 piece. That was a big call, and it had everything it needed: powers, grounds, trigger signal, no spark. So that fixed the spark. Awesome. So we'll be back with the final repairs. I'm happy about how this is going so far. Alright, I actually want to hear this thing run, so we'll put it on a little bit of choke. I put in the 4th spark plug there. Good. A little bit of choke. First time this bike has run in what, 2 years? Amazing! It's been a week. We got some parts, some Triumph parts for this gas tank and a brand new crankshaft position sensor. So this should be everything we need to get this bike back on the road. So we have a new diaphragm for the fuel petcock. We might need a spring, and then a new knob so we can switch the gas from on to reserve to prime. So let's take this guy off right here and see if we can install that new diaphragm to make the gas shut off when there's no vacuum. So what I'm seeing here is there's this little vent hole that goes to the outside, and it's plugged up with some kind of, I don't know if it's JB Weld or something a little softer, but that is supposed to be open because, see this hole right here? It goes through the hard plastic piece. So when this thing is moving, so the vacuum's on this side, and it pulls it, and this opens the fuel valve. So there is supposed to be a vent to this little chamber, so to prevent the diaphragm from ripping or, you know, creating a little pressure in here going back and forth. So we have to clean that out before installing this diaphragm. So got my little collection of little springs, random springs, and I found one that's fairly light spring that will close the valve when there's no vacuum, and we can try just suck on this nipple. See, the valve moves. No problem. So let's assemble it on the bike and try to turn on the gas. Guys, the brand new knob snapped in half just like the old one did. I didn't even turn it that hard. What the? Pieces. What kind of garbage are they selling? Alright, here's a flow test with the petcock. It's in the middle position, so that should be on. I have a vacuum line attached. I'm just going to suck on it and see if we see any gas. Sweet. So that works. Let's try to turn it clockwise. So that must be reserve. Yep, so that's also vacuum blocked. And if we turn it all the way counterclockwise, that should be prime. Yep. So that's on. That's reserve. On, prime. So we'll leave it in the on position. Nice flow. Alright, so we're done with that. Let's reassemble the bike and take it for a test drive. Next step, got the new crankshaft position sensor installed and gapped to 0.6 millimeters to the tooth there. So that's snug. Let me put a little RTV on this broken gasket. We'll seal this up and route the fuel lines, make sure it's getting gas, and take it for a spin. Hopefully the weather holds up. Alright, here's a flow test of the petcock. All the lines are connected, including the vacuum line. See that blue line that goes to the third carburetor little nipple? That's intake vacuum. So I drained the gas out of the side carburetor. Now I'm gonna, well, let's just turn the petcock to prime. So I made a little mark. This is reserve. That's on, and this should be prime, and we should see gas coming out of this carburetor as soon as it reaches. There it goes. Perfect. So we're going to close this off and let it fill up, turn it to reserve, and then it should fire up and run normally. No issues at all. Almost there. Let me reconnect these wires. Alright, everything's reassembled. I got the petcock on the reserve position, so once we get vacuum, it'll feed all the carburetors. They're primed up. Let's see if this sucker will start up on its own. So ignition on. Give it a little bit of choke. No choke. A bit of choke. Nope, needs a boost. Alright, let's turn on the tornado. 13.5 volts. So this battery is almost wasted, but let's see if we can get this thing running. Hope we won't vibrate off here. There we go. Almost, just a little bit of choke. There we go. Here are voltages. See, what if we turn the charger off? Rev it up. See if it will restart on its own. kill switch doesn't work. Okay, you gotta shut it off like this. Man, this bike has been... Okay. Looks good. Okay. Oh, that'll work. When I popped off the clutch fluid reservoir, there's no fluid in it. No wonder the clutch wasn't disengaging all the way. Let's top that off and see if it'll kind of bleed out right here. See, there's bubbles coming out. Right there. That should help a lot. So that's all I'm doing. Pumping all the way, releasing, and then doing light little presses to move that piston, get all the bubbles out. It's already feeling better. Hydraulic clutch, how about it? This is the slave cylinder down here. We're not going to touch that. We're just going to make sure all the bubbles are out. Close it up. Go for another little test drive. make sure this is ready to return to the customer. See all that? Lots of bubbles in there. Oh yeah, now we got good, solid clutch feel. Very nice. Alright, so I think we're done with this Triumph for now. It starts, it runs. I would put a new battery in it for you know, longer trips, but the diagnosis with it was interesting. Two bad parts, the igniter and the crankshaft position sensor. Now did the bad sensor glitching cause the igniter to over spark and, you know, crap out? Perhaps, but end of the day, needed both parts. So sometimes the diagnosis, you need data. We saw concrete evidence on the picoscope that even with a good signal with a repaired crankshaft position sensor, there was absolutely no spark and the igniter was not triggering the ignition coils. That was the main customer complaint. Then the leaky petcock was overfilling the carbs, putting gas in the crankcase that was running rich. Corrected that problem. Too bad the replacement plastic knob snapped in half on the first try. Garbage. So we'll just leave it in reserve and it won't have any issues. He'll just have to top it off, top off his tank every 200 miles or something. But I think that's it. And added some clutch or a brake fluid to the clutch reservoir. Now the clutch works, so everything is good. Time to enjoy the nice weather. Keep the rubber side down, ride safe, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.